we are joined by two lovely ladies. Licensed psychologist Dr. Margaret Triphi Wallace and health and wellness coach Dr. Simone Mathieu. Guys, this is real. Men's mental health, a serious issue in our country. One I believe, and I'm going to push for that we begin resolving as soon as possible. So let's bring the ladies in. Dr. Wallace, Dr. Mathieu, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Richie. Good afternoon to our audience on Q95 FM radio, as well as YouTube and Facebook. Richie, it's great to be back with you again for this very important topic. I'm really happy to see that we're keeping the focus on this important topic of mental health in Dominica.
Well, thank you. Dr. Wallace, your introductory remarks. Welcome.
Good. Well, it's not morning anymore. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Triphi. Thank you for the invitation. I am very happy to hear us talking about men's mental health and how to make that better in Dominica for our boys into manhood through the lifespan.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys were listening tentatively. I saw that to the first engagement we had with Pastor Counselor Randy Rodney and nurse at the acute psychiatric unit, Julia Charles Jules. And some interesting things came up. We want to stick on that topic of men's mental health. I'd like to begin with Dr. Mathieu at this time. Based on what you've seen as a professional health and wellness coach, are men generally taking their health and wellness seriously?
Well, Richie, let me chime in and say I'm also an associate professor of psychology as well. So just to distinguish the two, Dr. Triphi sees clients, right? And I'm the one teaching those who will see clients in the future. So just want to make that clear to our audience. But I think we've explored that our men need to be more focused on their health. But I think it goes beyond our men, right? I think this is a family concern. This is a societal concern. This is a national concern. So I'm really happy to hear Dr. Nadia Wallace, the other Dr. Wallace. So we had a Dr. Wallace this morning with Wallace, and we have another Dr. Wallace on today. But I was happy to hear Dr. Wallace this morning with Wallace. And again, we want to commend Wallace for the great work he too is doing in this area. And she talked about a national policy on mental health. So I really want to commend Dominica in general for taking the steps forward towards realizing the importance of mental health, especially among our men. And why are we so focused on our men? We're focused on our men because we all have stress, we all have frustration. Many of us are facing depression, but I think it is greater in our men because what we are seeing in our society is that many of the traditional roles that men have taken on, right, have now been taken on by women. So we're seeing women excel in just about every area of life, right? But it begs the question, why we were so focused on empowering our women? Was it or is it to the detriment of focusing on our men? So the call for balance, the balance of empowering our men and empowering our women, because again, we're seeing our women excel in so many areas, and then we're kind of not really seeing our men out there in terms of excelling, especially our young men. So again, an individual level, a family level, a community level, and a national level is what we have to take into account as we continue these conversations.
Can you list some of the contributing factors men generally, to men generally being reckless with their health. What do you think causes a man, young or otherwise, to develop these traits that is considered reckless?
Yeah, well, as a practitioner in the field, I'm going to hand this one over to Dr. Triphi because she works very closely with the male population up here in the U.S. So, Dr. Triphi?
Yes. So I do work with men, women, boys, girls. And I would say that there are many factors that contribute to that. I think society has placed a burden on men to be the leaders. Even now we have raging conversations on social media about masculinity. What does a masculine man look like? How is a boy supposed to act in the community? One of those main facets that we've taught our boys, and that's carried into manhood, is that you don't cry and that you don't acknowledge your emotions, because to do that means you're working from your feminine, which is correct. Our emotions are from our feminine side. The truth, though, is that every human being, according to psychology, according to Carl Jung, has got masculine and feminine energies. And our task is to learn how to use those energies to build, to create, to bring balance, to help, right? To grow and change when we need to. But when we teach our boys, as we have, especially in our culture, that to acknowledge their softer parts, their emotions, which are biological and which belong to all human beings, when we teach them that that's a wrong thing, that's a no-no, then that part of our boys, I think, gets interrupted. That growth, that ability to use their words to describe their feelings, that gets stunted. And they are taught to perhaps lean into a few emotions more so than the softer ones, right? So anger, which is actually a secondary emotion, becomes easier for our boys to access because it lines up closer to their masculinity, their idea of masculinity. It actually biologically lines up more to testosterone, which is a hormone that is more prevalent, right, in males. And when we begin to change the understanding of that, I think that'll be a key factor. Yeah, that'll be a key factor. Men are also, because of that testosterone, more likely to lean into risk-taking behaviors. All right, so ignoring problems. I'm strong. I got it like that. That ties into masculinity, yes, but it also exposes you to. So think about it. If you're raising boys versus girls, who's more likely to have a broken bone?
Boys,
right? So that's what I'm talking about. And as we teach our boys, we train our boys in a different way, in a more balanced way, to appreciate their whole self versus just their masculinity, their whole self versus just their masculinity. I think we'll see some better outcomes. And Dr. Simone talked about it. We focused a lot, I think, as well, over the last few decades on our girls, because things were lopsided for a while.
Right.
And, as humans do, like a seesaw, you try to seesaw, Margarito, right? But I think we've gone all the way to the other side. Yeah, and we acted as if we couldn't do both at the same time, which is what we need to do. So we need to come back into balance, to pay attention to how our boys are doing, so that our men, as they grow up, don't suffer as much and don't ignore big parts of themselves. Your mental health is as important as your physical health. So if that's not being paid attention to, you're going to be in suffering.
Yeah, if I might chime in as well, Richie, just to give another quick example of where we see this very pronounced. I was just watching the PSS, Portsmouth Secondary School graduation ceremony, and while I did not catch the entire ceremony, from what I saw, the people who were receiving the awards were the girls. I saw 2 boys receive awards. The majority were girls. And what does that say to us? It's not that the girls are smarter than the boys, right? It's probably that the girls have more support. And this existed back when we were growing up, because my brother and my cousin, my male cousins, were allowed to roam the streets and get into whatever they got into. But we as girls, we were held in the house, and we had no other choice but to study. So where is that divide? Why are our girls excelling so much more? And I think that is at the stem, that is at the root of many of the issues that we are seeing in our society today.
Fantastic. Ladies, well, from what you've said so far, there appears to be a fear of allowing boys to accept their whole self, as Dr. Wallace put it, and not lose their masculinity. Because I think this is a myth that when you understand your whole self, I like to use the word emotional intelligence, which allows you to tap into both your feminine and masculine side, but embracing your identity that, I'm a man. Even if I may cry at a certain situation, but the situation warrants me cry. Even if I'm angry at a certain situation, but the situation warrants me being angry without, breaking the computer or breaking my television. But I get my point across, like, I'm angry now, don't mess with me. You get the point, without me becoming violent, And I think people need to break that fear. But you guys can probably get into that as we move forward. Dr. Wallace, I'd like to stay with you a little bit. By any chance, this is just off the cuff. Can you give us some statistics as it relates to the estimated amount of men suffering with mental health challenges, probably in the US or in Dominica, if you have it?
So it's not a statistic that comes to my mind off the cuff. I will say that men, more so than women, will avoid seeking help.
Okay.
So women find it much more comfortable to reach out for help. Okay. If we're thinking about things like suicide, so if I think of an idea of suicide, men are more likely to complete suicides because the way they try to hurt themselves is more lethal and it's more potent, it's more powerful. Women might be more likely to say, I'm feeling sad and depressed. And because they say it, they might be more likely to receive the support. And also because it's been more normalized for them to go out there and ask for help without feeling shame
or judged,
right? Or judgment, then they're more likely to do that. And you just mentioned emotional intelligence. A big facet of emotional intelligence is knowing when I need help and having the language to ask for that help. Identifying my resources in the community so that I can do better versus not saying anything about it or persevering as if I got it like that. I got it. Yeah. That keeps us in the suffering. That keeps us in the pain and struggling, working harder. Sometimes, yes, we do come out of it, but the other person who went and sought help, professional help, they get out of it so much faster. They can keep moving and growing and pushing past it.
Yeah. Thanks, Doc. If I might add as well, Richie, again, looking at the different facets of society as it relates to this particular issue, and it begs the question, what is going on in our homes? Because we all know that the first place that we are socialized, the first place that we were taught to be male, to be female, is in our home. And then when we hear from Dr. Wallace, the first program I listened to, not this one today, but before, when she talks about 7 people attempting suicide in Dominica every week, it begs the question, where is the intervention? What happens to these 7 people who have attempted suicide this week? What is the intervention? Are they being counseled? And also when you hear her speak, and I found this particularly shocking and alarming, I couldn't believe what I heard. When she also said, Richie, that when a young person discloses to a parent that they're suicidal, the response is one less plate for me to fool.
Wow.
I mean, Richie, can you imagine a parent is saying to a child, who is suicidal, one less plate to full. And that just kind of gives us a glimpse into what is going on in our family. So do we need intervention even within our families to assist our young people who are most vulnerable?
So, Doc, I think that many parents without the skills are overwhelmed.
Yes.
By the gravity of this, by how big that thought is, that my child is even feeling depressed, or even feeling depressed to that point that they're suicidal. So not knowing what to do, a lot of us, we just shut down, and we build a wall. Because if I'm feeling as a mother very overwhelmed by this, I might just harden my heart, so to speak, and think, well, if I whoop it out of you, or scream it out of you, or call you a name, that'll get you in line. Not understanding that that's not the way, that there actually are ways to support your children better. I also think that many parents are just overwhelmed by life and exhausted themselves, very burnt out, very stressed out, as the human being. Although they are parents, they are Sandra Brown first, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that person, John Brown, is exhausted trying to work, trying to bring in enough to keep the lights on, all of that stuff. And so when we are so stressed out, our coping skills, they go out the window. Our patience goes out the window. Our conversations get shorter because we don't have as much time.
Yeah.
We don't even want to feel that we might have a new problem.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
try to shut it down. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I get you. I get you. A lot of people can relate to what you and even Pastor Rodney and Nurse Jules have said so far. I mean, this is just so real. The way you guys are bringing this out so clearly. I think it's going to bring a lot of clarity to the Dominican public and to those listening right now. Dr. Mathieu, let's get back to you. What would you tell a young man in his 20s, right, to convince him to take his personal health seriously instead of abusing his body with things like edibles? That's the new thing on the block in Dominica now.
Really?
Alcohol, cigarettes, or cocaine.
Yeah, absolutely, Richie. And that kind of lends itself to that sense of hopelessness, right? Because when we feel hopeless, we are less likely to take care of ourselves, both physically and mentally. So you find a lot of our young men, unfortunately, resorting to drugs and alcohol and just reckless behavior in general, because we cannot neglect the amounts of young men who have died by motorcycle recklessness in Dominica. But one of the things I also want to mention is that I work with a group here, a nonprofit organization here in Georgia called Father Movement. So I'm the health and wellness coach for Father Movement. And what we do is we use goal setting as a way of providing hope, not just to men, but to families in general. So we teach people the importance of health as it relates to both your physical and your mental health. So we talk about the importance of nutrition. We have 2 nutritionists on board. We have an executive director, and we have me as the health and wellness coach. So we teach the importance of physical and mental health. We teach the importance of exercise, movement, whether it is you go for a run, you go for a walk, you spend some time laughing with family, distress it, right? And what we have our participants do every week is we have them set mini goals. So every week, it's a 6-week program. Every week, your homework is to set a mini goal that you work on during the week. And then you come back and you report the next week as to what were your challenges, what were your successes, what were the obstacles. And it is amazing, Richie, and Dr. Triphi and everybody else who's listening. It is amazing to see how people light up, even when they did not fully accomplish the goal. So I say all this to say that many of our young men, and our young men are focused today, many of our young men have no goal. They have no aspiration, right? So without that, there is no hope There is no purpose to your life. So you end up engaging in those reckless behaviors. Pastor Rodney mentioned before how men are quick-tempered, right? Because you have not taught those coping skills that come with being a part of an organization. Many of the young men are not interested in joining organizations, right? So the importance of teaching our young people the importance of goal setting and working with them to work towards that goal. So they have that sense of hope and they have that sense of purpose, including their physical and their mental health goals.
Thank you, Dr. Mathieu. Dr. Wallace, Dr. Triphi Wallace, uh, is therapy a bad thing, as some men claim?
Stigma.
I get this. Some say, I did some research. Some some say that therapists and counselors have more problems than their patients. They also claim that therapists gossip about their patients' problems with other therapists or counselors. How do you respond to these claims?
Mm. I feel sad about that misunderstanding,
Yeah.
because the research actually shows that if you were receiving therapy the year before, the amount of money you make increases next year. Why? Because you got a clearer mind. You're more focused. Perhaps, as Dr. Mathieu said, you were able to clarify some goals.
Mm,
Yeah. So, I mean, I can appreciate that having to be vulnerable, which is a feminine trait. Yeah, it's a feminine trait. Having to be vulnerable is terrifying. It is not encouraged among men. And so I can appreciate how that supports the stigma and
mm,
supports, encourages people to avoid going to therapy, because somehow talking about my problems means I have to admit I have a problem. And if I've
mm,
been taught I'm a provider, protector, I'm a hero, that can feel very painful, uncomfortable for men. So how do we shift that? Because it's a shifting that has to happen. It's mindset that has to change.
yeah.
Their mindset has to change. So we as a community have to normalize vulnerability in human beings and seeing where and when your vulnerability is a strength. Your vulnerability is a strength if you can identify you're having a problem and you can admit it so that you can do something about it.
Yeah.
Perhaps we rebrand help seeking as heroic, because if a man can tie in the idea that if I'm struggling, right, if I'm sad to the point where I don't want to get up out of bed, but I go anyway, but before I come back I'm drunk because I can't tolerate being inside my body, right? Perhaps I can see that if I go for help, I'm not really weak. I'm actually sacrificing my fears of being vulnerable. That's the price I'm paying to keep myself healthy so that I can provide for my family. So seeing how I can connect the rewards of being vulnerable, yeah, to my life, to my children. I honestly think we have stopped doing a good job in our elementary schools. It's got to start from down there. It's got to start from, childhood, teaching, equipping our men,
Yeah.
equipping our boys with that level of freedom to be able to ask for support, that level of skills where we start teaching them what to do. Use your breath, count to 10 before you act out on your feeling of anger. Yes,
Mm,
reach out. We talk about skills that you learn from being in groups. Interpersonal communication,
mm,
learning to hear the word no and backing down, yeah, without acting out instead, right? In a rage. So
yeah.
encouraging our men to listen to others, to be with, participate, right? Cooperate with others from the time they're boys, where we're training leaders on purpose. We used to do that using civics. I know I've said this many, many, many times. like sometimes, if your mother is talking a lot, sometimes you tune your mother out. Um, I know I say this a lot, but I want us to think about it. Where else did we learn about the Proverbs? Many of us, we lean back into Proverbs now, right? A stitch in time saves nine.
Saves nine, and
Yeah, don't cry over spilt milk. I don't have to, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Where did we learn that? We learned that in elementary school, in civics class, or a life skills class. These things, we can train our kids to be great at addition and AI and all of the rest, but we have to train good human beings, or wiser human beings who can really stick around long enough to be able to enjoy the fruits of the labor that they're providing, right? And creating. So that's a part of our education that's been not nourished enough in the past few decades, I think. And I do believe it is contributing to the sense of not having the foundation that our young men need. Additionally, many Dominicans have left. The way that we interact with each other is more fractured. It's less communal. It's more individual. And so those webs, those links we used to have, we don't have them as much, because back in the day, I would see you in school. I would see you also in church. We'd be doing First Communion classes together, but we would also be on the same beach together. We might be playing marbles together. We might be playing hopscotch and moral after together. And if things were hard at my home, at your home, I could sit on the rock. Somebody was saying that with me last week, Jeff. If things were very tough at my house, at your house, I could sit outside and your family might open the door and I could watch TV with you. We have that communal experience. I am not alone. But as we move towards a more individualistic culture, people are losing a lot of the connections, the ties that bind us, the social support that we need to feel safe. Because things are going to get hard for every human being at some point.
Yeah, and if I might chime in as well, Richie, and Dr. Triphi is absolutely correct in what she's saying. But also, even if we think about it, I just talked about the national policy that is being reviewed in Dominica, the mental health national policy. And it targets, mental health workers, it targets community leaders. But one of the areas it's not going to target are the schools. Right. So again, without a civics course like Dr. Triphi was just talking about, who is teaching those kids who are in the dysfunctional homes?
And that's what I was going to say.
What is right and what is wrong?
Exactly. Because I think, and again, my previous guest alluded to that. They concluded that the solution has to start with the schools and the family.
Yeah.
Because that's the social background of any society, which determines the percentage of people who will be functional in society. Your next percentage of criminals in society. Sure. People don't want to see it like that, but these are the facts. And so if we're talking about dynamic Dominica, you're talking about a progressive Dominica, you cannot leave out the social element.
Absolutely. And also to add, Richie, as well, we already mentioned that many of the young men are not interested in formal organizations. And I've had this conversation several times on my own program where we've had organizations, it's all women, and they said the men are not interested. And my response to them, we still have a responsibility as a community to engage our men, because what it boils down to is only a man truly knows what it is like to be a boy. And only a man can really teach a boy to be a man. We can try as much as we want as women, but only a man can truly teach a boy how to be a man. And so I was appealing to the women on my program to find ways to engage our young men, right? So they're not naturally interested in being a part of the organization, but engage with them organically. right? If you're carrying a heavy load, we know men are naturally physically stronger than women. You engage the young boy you see on the side of the road and you say to him, hey, you want to help me with this package? That is how you're pulling him into a positive environment. And then once you've done that with a few of the young boys, then you're naturally going to start conversations with them. And they're naturally going to tell you what is affecting them, what do they need. Because many times we have these programs and we talk about what men need, but we're not asking them. So it is really the responsibility of all of us. If we say we love our people, we're Christian, we're a Christian nation, we're a Christian community, it is really up to us not to turn our noses up when we see the boys on the block and criticize them, but to try to start thinking, because I am a very solution-oriented person, and I know Dr. Triphi is as well, but how do we engage them in an organic way? Young men like to drive. Maybe you ask them to drive you to the market and naturally a conversation flows from that. So we have to start thinking outside of the box in terms of how to reach our men, because we're losing a whole generation.
I agree.
Young men in Dominica.
Yeah, Dr. Triphi, you wanted to chime in?
I completely agree. And so, Richie, as you're saying, us saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter, or knowing the truth, but not doing anything about it is almost, boy, it's very, I'm going to refrain from using a judging word here. It's not smart. It's not smart. If I'm seeing the reality of, my existence, if we're building a country together and we're saying, okay, well, this is the state of our boys. The next step, as Dr. Simone says, is to find a solution. So we have to become very intentional about this. This is the kind of society we want to create. What do we need to do? Right? Reverse. It has to start from small. It has to start from small, right? 0 to 7 is where the personality is formed. Meaning who I am is going to be cooked in that stage. Okay, who has access to a human being? 0 to 7. Family of origin, church, and school. So isn't that where you've got to start? It makes sense, right? It's that simple. It is really that simple. Yeah. So now you create programs for parents, programs in the schools, programs at church. It's that simple. The research is telling you between 0 to 7, personality is formed.
Before you continue, Dr. Triphi, I just want to include some of the great comments coming in there from our fellow Dominicans. Bradley Edwin, he's like, it would be helpful for clinicians like counselors, therapists, psychologists to create a central hub, like some kind of counseling directory where persons can actually access these clinicians for support, especially when in crisis. So to make it easier, some medium, some association that would make it easier to reach out to professionals like you all.
Yeah, and I just want to, and Dr. Triphi, I want to make sure you finish your point, but I also just want to chime in very quickly and commend Tina Alexander in Dominica, because she's doing a fantastic job in terms of providing, I think it's a hotline that she's created for people in crisis in Dominica. But again, it begs the question, helpline, thank you, Richie. But again, it begs the question, what happens next? What is the ongoing intervention? What is the ongoing services available for those in crisis? So Dr. Triphi, I didn't want to interrupt you.
You're doing good. What is the plan? What is the plan? If there's a problem, what is the plan? If there's a problem, what is the plan? Okay, so we have to start where we are, which is, okay, we see a crisis. These are the problems. Let's come up with a hotline with services, resources. But how do we stop this? How do we nip it in the bud? How do we reshape things? You reshape 0 to 7. Who has access to the 0 to 7ers? Family. Okay, most families might be able to do their best to teach their kids, but not all families can, right? We have some, we call them dysfunctional families. I'm going to say they're struggling families without the skills necessarily to teach and train, right? Or they might be so busy they don't have the time. That's where school used to pick up the slack, because there used to be more. It was built into the curriculum. If it's not built into the curriculum, some schools will do it and some schools won't. You won't know who's doing it and who's not doing it. If it's built into the curriculum, a life skills class where you teach these things, where we talk about these things, in those groups, in those free associating kinds of groups, your child is going to say in your class, well, mom, well, not mom, but miss, oh, really? People not supposed to talk to me like that? Well, how are they supposed to talk to me? Well, that's how my mom talks to me. And I feel bad and I feel sad about it. You can identify some of your kids that need more support in those kinds of systems. If churches pay more attention to that, that's another area where you have access. We can do this stuff. We can do it. We have to do it. We can do it and we have to do it if we want our outcomes to change. Yeah. If we want it to change.
Because I'll be straightforward. Feeding off your energy for the afternoon. There's no way that the future can be bright without a healthy population, a mentally healthy population. We see that this thing is so very closely tied into emotional intelligence. You know, anything apart from that, you will have a lot of dysfunctional people in high office. We're talking at the prime minister level. We're talking ministers of government, your fellow technocrats, persons in the Ministry of Agriculture who are just unstable in the future. And I'm saying, I don't think that's the Dominica you want, where when you call into some statutory body, you answered, very disrespectfully because the person can't even hold a proper conversation because whatever made them angry and they don't know how to vent. I mean, these things, it's starting to happen. It's starting to get worse. And like you said, Dr. Triphi, it has to be nipped in the bud. It has to stop because you're going to have a crisis on your hands within the next 15, 20 years in our country. And I don't think we want that. I don't want that. And so this issue of mental health, it has to be taken very seriously. Let me just ask, in terms of, Dr. Mathieu, in terms of health and wellness, we know that there are certain activities, either on a personal level or on a family level, that when people engage in these things, it boosts their psyche. It provides clarity. Can you expound on some of these activities that are recommended to somehow allow family members to vent and to become closer to each other and develop this kind of safe environment against mental health challenges?
Yeah, well, Richie, I think the first thing we have to look at, even before we look at outlets for maybe stress relief, we have to look at what are the major areas of stresses in our life, right? And I think many people in Dominica would agree with me when they say finances, right? So a lot of what we're talking about is because of many of our men tell us, right? We know Dominica is not very good at keeping statistics. We've tried, right? Dr. Triphi, I'm sure at some point you've tried to get some statistics out of Dominica. But we hear the accounts of men who are stressed out because they are not gainfully employed. And that is one of the reasons I always talk about try to think outside of the box in terms of other income streams based on your own skills, your own talents, to be able to alleviate that stressor of finances, right? And then the other thing that works is that we all know the importance of health and wellness. So a lot of us know, we need to de-stress, maybe go take a bath in the river, go take a swim in the ocean. Unfortunately, we do not have easy access to the Windsor Park, where many young men, generations of young men, would be able to just pick up a ball and go play some basketball, right? So we have to look at the constraints in the Dominica society. But I like to think of our health and wellness as a personal responsibility. So yes, there are external factors that are impacting each one of us, but that is still our personal responsibility. So one of the things that I do is I work a lot with how to be consistent, because that is the area many of us struggle with, right? So we might go play basketball today, then 3 weeks later, we haven't touched the ball, right? We might go for a walk today, 3 weeks later, we haven't gone for a walk. So the importance on working on that consistency. And that is where the concept of push past 10 actually comes from, just in case anybody was wondering. Because again, to always get that activity in, what you have to tell yourself is, I'm going to push past the first 10 minutes, and then that generates the momentum to keep you going. So if you do that on a regular basis, you find that you become more consistent. So yes, the importance of having those activities that boost our mood, that improve our mental health, but really seeing it as an individual responsibility, because so many times we can get caught up in thinking, oh, the system is holding me back. Yes, the system is holding you back, but what can you do about it? Are you just going to spend the rest of your life wallowing in your misery because the system is holding you back? Or are you going to take some sort of personal responsibility? And as many of our entrepreneurs are doing in Dominica and continue to do in Dominica, and again, I was just watching a program where we had an event for entrepreneurs. There were, I think, 15 girls and 3 boys. Okay, so again, the evidence is real. And so we have to continue to invest and to engage with our young men on all those different levels we've been talking about.
Well said. Well said, Dr. Triphi. Your remarks on some of the things that families and men in particular can do to sort of build that a safe zone within themselves, within their homes, not even just for themselves, to preserve their mental health, but their family.
Okay, so I want to address something. I want to address us as parents. First off, learning to identify when our kids are struggling, and taking action, right? Dr. Simone mentioned earlier, like what Dr. Wallace said, with families who, if a child says, I'm struggling, that the response might be to try to shut that down, so the parent doesn't have to hear it or do something about it. We have many kids who are struggling with attention problems in school. Yeah, they're not listening, they're not sitting still, they're not learning. And if they don't learn, they get frustrated. As they get older, they act out, they become the class clown. Yeah. I think we have to become more intentional about identifying when somebody's going outside of what we know is usual or typical, and applying interventions from childhood up, because before we become the man, we are boys. So we have to do a better job here of identifying when our kids are struggling. As far as when you get to the age of reason and understanding, because my firm belief is that regardless of your childhood, when you become an adult, you have a responsibility to look back on that childhood and see what you're keeping with you and moving forward with, or what you're dropping. What is not working for me? Even if my parents were the best parents in the world and they did their best, they taught me these skills to cope and whatever, some of what they taught me, I don't want to do it. It's not working for me, as well as they said it was going to work for me. I have a responsibility to create the life I want. Therefore, I must set out on a journey. Every man has a hero's journey, right? Where you become a man, right? You got to go out. Think of men in movies. They set off on a trek. They set off on a journey to find themselves. Along that way, your task is to look for resources to help you to strengthen not just your body, but your mind, because everything is mental. The universe is a mental universe before it's a physical universe, because my ideas are what create the thing. So that is where I have to start. And that is the understanding that adults must create and cultivate. I'm no longer a child. So whatever happened to me, it happened. It's a story. It's just details, facts. All right? I went to this school. This person said that to me. This person did that to me. I didn't have this when I was growing up. I had this when I was growing up. But now I'm here in this moment as an adult, as a man. How am I moving forward? What do I need to do to create my best life? And the whole world right now is so full of resources,
Mhm.
so full of resources at our fingertips. So it's about choosing, making the decision to go off on that hero's journey to find what I need to create the life I decide that I want. It's all available. The tools, the resources, there might not be therapists in Dominica. If you're on Facebook, you can type in resources for you went through a traumatic event as a boy, you were sexually molested as a boy. And yes, that happens to many of our boys. They just don't talk about it because they might seem weak. And they've been taught that men are not supposed to be weak and vulnerable. So they carry that and they act out in ways that hurt them and hurt other people. Yeah. But if you type that in right now, into your computer, into ChatGPT, you're going to get some resources on the world stage that you have access to. We're going to get books that you can start reading. Yeah, because creating a system of mental health in Dominica is going to take time
Yeah.
and organization and money. Well, you don't have to wait. You do the best you can right now with what you have. So that's what I would say. I say it's a responsibility. We've got to do it.
Right.
Dr. Mathieu.
Yes, and tools and resources, Doc, but also the people we surround ourselves with, right?
Yeah.
Because I always remember this very important interview I did with Stephen Lander, and he said at a very young age he was very cognizant of the people he wanted to surround himself with. He wanted to surround himself with people who were doing better than him.
Yes.
Who were mentors, who could be coaches, right? So the importance of even when we have our young children, and the reality is a lot of our young men are not listening to this program.
Exactly.
Right? We already know them. So reaching them where they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having folks like Shelley, having young people. I'm looking at the Q95 family and I'm thinking we can start a whole grassroots movement. When we look at Richie, who's right here, we look at DJ Shan, we look at Fedderson Valmore, who's excelling, we look at Sherwin Norris, we look at all the young men in there who are doing well. And that is only just the one little studio at Q95. Extend that beyond Q95 and look at the people the men who are doing well, and trying to think of how we can put them in strategic situations where they can intervene, where they can, casually, I like the word casually, because I think all these formal approaches that we're trying, they might just fall on deaf ear. But the importance of casual approaches, just saying to a young man, yo, let's just go and have a beer. Let's just go pull up, sit down somewhere and just have a beer. So the importance of coming back to that grassroots movement to get this done. Because we have to look ourselves in the mirror and not just say, oh, these boys, they're useless, they're worthless. But when we look ourselves in the mirror, we have to say, and what am I doing about it? Yeah. Because they're members of our community, they're members of our society, and they are impacting our lives in a general way. And if I might also add, Richie, again, being solution oriented, what I'm going to do for the month of July for Roots Connections is I'm going to do a follow-up program. Hopefully Dr. Kevin Laura is available in July, because I want to follow up with him on the men's symposium that was recently held in Dominica, because again, we have to go beyond these conversations. These conversations are great. Mm-hmm. But what happens after the conversations? Are we all just going back to our corners and moving on with our lives when our men are still in crisis? So I want to follow up with him on the next steps, the way forward after the men's symposium. And I've also just been advised that, contrary to popular comments, that the Dominica Boy Scouts is actually in existence, because I've tried to reach out to them before and I was told that they're dead. There's no Dominica Boy Scout. But interestingly enough, Miss Yugat Sentile, thank you, Yugat. She's such a wonderful supporter of the work that I do. She just reached out to me this week and said, contrary to what people think, that the Boy Scouts is dead, and she put it in capitals because she knows that people think that they're dead. they're alive and well, and they would like to come on and tell of the work that they're doing in the various communities. So that is what I'm talking about, Richie, the grassroots movement. We talked about what's going on the national level. We talked about the importance of men investing in their own selves. We talked about the importance of the role of the family. But now we need to look at our organizations that are on the forefront, and how can we support these organizations so that they are more impactful, that they have a greater reach into penetrating our community of men in Dominica.
For sure. So I'm looking at a flyer, and we're doing this on the right day because this event is set for tomorrow from 5 to 7 p.m. At the UE Open Campus. It's a men's mental health recovery conference with guest speakers like Tyrese Francis and Frederick Christopher, Philip Roll, Dr. Dylan Hippolyte, and Dr.
I think that's the Boys to Men initiative.
Boys to Men initiative. And so if we can, perhaps those people who are listening today, if we can, perhaps each one reach one. Yeah, I will make sure that I post this flyer.
And please send it to me, Doc.
I will. Right, so we can start doing something because we've talked about it. No, it's the doing of it, and the idea of being focused on who you surround yourself with is powerful. Research shows that if you want to know how you're going to be doing in life, look at your 5 best friends, your 5 closest acquaintances. You're going to be doing similarly to them. In youth work, in youth mental health, one measure we use is called the CAFAS. It's a Child and Adolescent Functioning Assessment Scale. And that scale, one of the measures we look for to see, to predict how well a child is going to be doing with their mental health, is who their friends are, who their peers are that they're hanging out with, because that's very important. In recovery work, in addiction recovery work, one of the strongest healing pieces of advice people get is change your people, places, and things. Be very focused on who you surround yourself with. You're not being mean, or you're not comparaison or higher than. You can hang out with people without, like being part of that group if you see, based on their outcomes and their results, that what they're creating is not the best for me. So our young boys have to learn how to read who's a good friend. We have to teach them who's a good friend, right? Who is not. It's okay to say hi, hang out, be with the person wherever in school, but this is not who you need to be hanging with, spending a lot of time with, right? Because the activities you might engage in might not be the best for you.
Yeah, and to add to that, Doc, toxic masculinity. So we often talk about toxic masculinity in terms of the less than favorable way some men relate to women. But what we are not paying attention to is that toxic masculinity can exist within men. So for example, when a man is hurting and he wants to cry, the other guy say, boy, what happened to your sissy? He get a go well. He's suffering. He really loved this girl. He really loved this woman. And now the relationship is over. Boy, man, get over that. Just gonna be with another woman, right? So we have to look at, and again, who are we surrounding ourselves with? So
how are we training our boys?
Yes, we have to keep in mind that while we have to address toxic masculinity in terms of how some men approach women, we also have to look at it within the circle of men and young boys.
That's very important. Okay, so I want to touch a little bit on the idea of training our boys to become men, and assuming the role of family men, fathers, people who create homes. Yeah, I don't know that we're doing enough to train our boys for that eventual role that they find themselves in, right? And how to do that in a way that is good for you, but also good for people around you, the people under your care, your wife, your children. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of boys get messages, toxic messages like women are there for your pleasure,
Yep.
but not necessarily as another separate human being to learn, to enjoy, to appreciate, to build with, to create with. They're not taught things like marriage is actually very healthy for men. Men live longer.
Yep.
They experience more joy in life if they're married. Yeah. And they are not taught the skills to maintain their relationships so that if they do get married and have kids, that they can enjoy their grandkids. When I say that, I mean they're not taught how to relate well enough to their spouses so that they can keep their marriages working well and healthy, so that they don't get divorced and the woman runs off to other countries with the kids so that they don't even see the grandkids. Yeah. This is important. This is real life. This is
Yeah.
real life. You know, this is real life. And we who know better must do better and take the next step to teach. That's the job of adults, is to teach the younger ones. And so if our kids are struggling, the adults are not doing as good a teaching job as we need to. So Dr. Simone says, well, let's meet them where they are. Yes, let's meet them where they are. Let's use the people who they're listening to teach them. Those who are doing well and who see clearer, let's use them to teach them.
Thank you, ladies. We're gonna take a few calls. Wow, wow, wow. Men's mental health. This is a very important topic, one that we should all take seriously. Caller, you're live. Hello, good afternoon, caller, you're live. All right, please call back. Just want to shout out those of you online. Ricardo St. Amy, good afternoon. Mr. Felix, Crispin Shillingford, Teresa Banish. Mr. Alvin Thomas, good afternoon, brother. Al Benoit, how are you? Jacqueline Lestrade Blanc. Hope you're enjoying the afternoon. And Inez Williams. Yes, it is a great initiative, Inez. Voice to Man initiative. Let's take this call. Caller, you're live. Hello, caller, you're live.
Yeah, Richie, that's me again. I get cut off a while ago. I don't know what's up.
Okay, well, welcome. You're here, and we're hearing you loud and clear.
And you have two psychologists there, or psychiatrists. Who they are?
We have Dr. Triphi Wallace. She is a clinical psychologist, yes, and we have a health and wellness coach, Dr. Simone Mathieu.
And associate professor.
I had an appointment to go and see her, but the rain messed me up. Dr. Wallace, sorry.
Yes, sir.
That's the wrong one.
Oh,
He's thinking you're Nadia.
Okay, blessings to you all in the interest of time. What's the other, the wellness nurse, doctor or nurse, whatever, blessings to you as well.
Same to you, blessings.
Just something, there's the go along to get along. And I'm glad you said that you do not want to say somebody who say, oh, you're prejudiced, you're préjugé. So sometimes you may perceive people to be the best person to befriend, and they are the worst. So you have to ask for discernment, the power of discernment, because some people you can follow them to your own detriment. And I listened to Pastor Rodney, and a nurse was there earlier on.
Nurse Jules.
And Pastor Rodney talked about Paho, talking about if a man cannot tolerate another man touching him. There is a mental problem with him. I want you to keep that in mind and answer, both of all you, because I'm a little confused. Because what are we teaching children nowadays? And when we talk about society, we think we're talking about Dominica. We're hearing about globalization. They talk about population reduction, it's population extermination. How dare you tell me, my child, or you have the rights to tell my child, that they are not a boy, they are more girl, or if they're crying, they're sick. I was on Federain a couple years ago, and a big Rastaman say, boy, I think you're more militant than that, I hear you crying. They does not understand the feminine side of me. I give thanks for it. Whenever I feel emotional, up to this morning, a guy was telling me a story about a young lady, and he showed me a picture and what is happening in Dominica to our young children. And I hide it. I did not make him see. The tears came down my eyes. I wiped it. I felt hurt. So really and truly, it's about a global agenda to bring about organized chaos in the world. So when our sexualities are confused, medically, chemically, clinically, and all of a sudden somebody feeling they want, a man feeling he wants a man more than he wants woman, then you start calling him nasty. In closing, as I'm growing in age, I am becoming less judgmental because it's not everything which appear are what they appear to be. A lot of madness in the world. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Blessings. Thank you for the perspective.
Yeah, let me chime in on what Blessings just said, Richie, and I want to thank Blessings because I think he should be at the forefront as a very outspoken man. He should really be a part of our grassroots movement where we are teaching our men to be vulnerable, that it is okay to cry. It is also okay to express your emotions in a healthy way. But just to kind of touch on what he talked about in terms of the global agenda. Look, I'm a parent, right? I'm a parent, and yes, there might be a global agenda, but my job as a parent is to be the gatekeeper for my child. So I think, yes, there are many, many people out there with their own nefarious agendas, right? And we can become completely consumed by that. But for those of us who have young, impressionable children, I think it is our responsibility to ensure that we are the gatekeepers so that we insulate them from those global agendas which may not work in their favor.